beautiful. I don't know, like from those who are here, like, is your mic working or no? I'm not completely sure. Oh, wait, that's right. That's why the video won't be recorded. I need to remove you from the spotlight. Sorry.
Hey, what's up? What's up, Fernando? You said Orlando in the chat.
Oh, yes, because there was like a spicy scene and you seem like very into it. It's okay, Orlando.
No, I
We're
was
seeing,
like freaked out. I was like freaked out. I was like, why are why are they showing this?
seeing your
You can see me? That's kind of creepy. I hoped you guys would have like taken my thing off because I was like out of it the whole time, and then I also left for like 20 minutes. So I don't know what. I
It's
guess you were
recorded.
still.
He was not paying attention to the movie.
Yeah,
But I
he's
mean,
fired.
I think it's a yeah. He's fire. This is your
That's
last
rough.
event with us.
I mean, I got
I
the
got
gist of it.
I got to tell you, that was like one of the best films I've ever seen. That might be the best movie I've seen in like the last 10 years. It was incredible.
I mean,
Oh,
let
it's.
Well,
You
let the
said that
people
was
who
I
the
want to.
mean,
best scene. I don't know.
it's
That's a
not for
tall order.
everyone. It's not for everyone, but yeah, it's a very good movie.
It's
I
a
Uh,
guess
very
you I
philosophical.
guess you replaced Persona, Manzi.
Oh, I'd say that's a. I don't know if that's a better film than Persona, but that is a. I mean, that is a full-on philosophical film. There's no question. But I'm curious. Look, there was so much to unpack in that movie, and I will say this before we get started: it's a really appropriate movie for the times we're living in. I know, it's supposed to be this dystopian future, but I think the movie was released in 2013. But I mean,
around.
it's pretty relatable nowadays in terms of our lives are kind of being lived online. Our jobs are online. We're spending all of our time in front of a computer. It's more of a virtual presence we have with other people than an actual physical presence. Um, and then therein, people get lost in their search for meaning. It's yeah. I mean, I got a lot of things I'd like to bring up, but yeah, I guess just generally, what was your opinion of it? I mean, was it worth watching, or did you get anything out of it? Were you just creeped out, or just did it provoke anxiety, or was it more thought provoking? Just curious.
All right, who's gonna go
Well,
first?
okay, go ahead.
Oh, I guess I will. All right, I'll just be honest, man. Why not be honest? This is a really pessimistic movie. I feel like, man, he's like, you literally you had faith, and that's why you didn't find meaning. So it's basically saying all you people that have faith, you're doing it wrong. That's what it kind of. I mean, maybe that's not necessarily the overall meaning, but if you take it like very lightly, like you'll find that kind of overall kind of direction. It's kind of, it's like, yeah, that's rough. But I thought what was interesting was that like it kind of reminds me of Albert Camus' like philosophy, like the myth of Sisyphus, where he talks about you're pushing up the stone for it to just crash, where he's making these building blocks for them to just be destroyed. And that can kind of be a representation of his purpose in life. Like he's constantly building this thing up, his faith, waiting for a call for it to never come. And so like in the end where he says, well, you were waiting for your faith, you were waiting for a call, and that's why you didn't make a purpose. When it's like that's kind of interesting because you could say that in building that and in enjoying it, he could have somewhat made a purpose. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I see
Uh,
that. I see that point. I will say this though: for Sisyphus, he knows that there's no greater meaning. Sisyphus, I mean, that's the punishment, is that he knows nothing else is coming. This guy's whole thing is that something is on the horizon. No pun intended. Uh, so yeah, just to respond, but it is it's definitely a tragedy. I mean, it's a clear tragedy.
it is
It's
a
funny.
clear tragedy. But I believe, like, I mean, yes, you can picture it through like the lenses of somebody who is really like, going to a severe crisis and what the end is like Jesus. But it also is just waiting for that specific message. It's gonna give meaning to whatever it is that you're trying to do, and sometimes that meaning really is just every life. Like every day, something is happening, and You just keep clean yourself from the past, and all you have to do is just take the opportunities you have ahead. So like I don't necessarily think is pessimistic. It's really like it does tells you like, I mean, whether there is meaning in life or not, you can still leave something positive if you believe whatever. And I found very curious that he keeps calling we. So I think it was like really metaphorical. It's like we as like maybe the audience is the one who's like living through like the perspective. Um, so it's just like I really think like everything that they were portraying there was just like metaphorical. Like there was nothing there like it was literal. I even believe that Bob is kind of like not really like a Bob, but it's kind of like that other hair and young, and it's kind of like trying to open his mind into like, hey, listen, you're getting all into these new old ideas. Like it's kind of like pointing out the things that he's not really wanting to face. It's like this is this is life, and he like quote the protagonist is kind of like he sees it, but he doesn't accept it, so he clings to fate, which is the call. Like it's easier to expect a call than to just take the actual call, which is to go with the love of your life to something that he doesn't want. That's what I think.
Yusha, if you're trying to talk, my dude, you're muted, I think, or your mic's not working.
Isidora is trying to say something. I don't know if you can open up your mic, but she's texting. She said that she was kind of confused because there was a lot going on. But what
Yeah,
makes you feel like confused? I mean, it's understandable. There's really a lot packed there. Everything is very packed.
I feel like everything
Um,
crazy.
oh my God, I forgot. Oh, hi.
Hi.
yeah, it was.
But
I mean, a lot going on for sure.
Yeah, there was a lot going on, and I just couldn't grasp the whole situation all at once. So I was very confused while watching it. I'm just like, what?
yeah, but you know why? Because that movie is really not meant to be seen as like literal. Like if you're trying to see like the best just from being the best, yeah, it's exactly what they're trying to show. But I don't want to like take much of the speaking thing since I know Josh is trying to speak. I don't know if he fixed his mic. Um,
Oh, did he just? Oh, he left.
or he can just disconnect.
Well,
Um,
like a reason it could be kind of confusing is like if you really think about it, it's kind of basically a movie that's saying that a movie with no meaning, I guess, in a sense. Not in the sense where there's no meaning to the movie, but like it's trying to say that there's no meaning in life. And so it's like it's kind of like abstract art where you're kind of just trying to figure out like, well, what am I supposed to feel from this? Many people can interpret it many different kinds of ways. But like I thought something that was interesting is like when that girl came to his house and she was like, "You should come with me." And like everyone's like first interpretation might be like, "Yeah, you know what? Your life kind of sucks, man. You might as well go with this chick because it's awful." But if you really think about it, should he have? Because that girl obviously had she had her own personal problems. She like even told him, "Look, I think you need me and I just need to be needed." That kind of points at some more issues. So it's like, would that have really worked out for him or would that have been bad for him? And I think in the end, where like everything is destroyed, everything is like just gone away, he finds his own paradise, I guess you could say, on the beach. So it's like maybe sometimes when we've built up this purpose in life, I guess it's kind of giving us this idea that maybe it's okay to start all over. Maybe when we're stuck at this job, or maybe when we find this purpose that we didn't, it's not what we thought it was initially. Maybe it's okay if we just find paradise somewhere else. That's kind of how I saw the ending.
Yeah, I want to respond, but Yusha, were you trying to talk before?
Thanks. I'm sorry. There's something wrong today with my system. Um, but yeah, what I was trying to say earlier was that I like the relationship uh between Bob and the lady, because I think Bob was his own younger self that was calling the older self out for the mistakes and the lack of opportunities that he took, because this guy, the bald guy, Cohen, I think his name is, Cohen left. He was like a workhorse, and even if you look at him, where everyone else in the society is dressed in these weird, funky clothes with feathers and leather and colors and shiny and what have you. There's Cohen, who is wearing like gray, blacks, and greens and browns, very monotonous. And then this kid comes in and he says, why do people like you? Because you're just a workhorse. That's why there's no calling. And the second aspect that I liked was, Cohen keeps telling his psychiatrist that he's not happy, and he doesn't even remember when was the last time he was happy. But I don't know if you guys saw the small clips in between where he was just programming or putting entities in. He was genuinely happy. He was laughing. He was smiling. He was enjoying it. So, also it seemed through his facial expressions. So it could be a point that we have these false instances of happiness in our daily lives that make us lose focus of the true happiness. Like when he was with that girl, I don't know her name, that lady that he was with,
Ainsley.
Baisley, yes. When he was with her, he doesn't even consider that moment of him being actually happy. So the only time he focuses on is the negative stuff, and every time he talks to his psychiatrist, that's the only stuff he talks about. Like, oh, I'm not getting a calling. I'm supposed to get a call. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. Even though he's saying we as an inclusive or a royal we, but his iterations are 100% soul. Like he just wants to be by himself. He says we to make a false persona that, oh, I'm a people's person. I don't I have friends, or I do get and mingle around with people. I think that's why he keeps on saying we.
Yeah, they never really explain entirely why he refers to himself as we, although he begins to wean himself off of that for a little while at least, due to Bob's influence. Because again, remember, this is the theme here is reality. And this movie is a big question of what is real, not just objectively, but what is real in terms of the individual's worth or what they take their purpose to be. What's so dystopian, it seems to me, is that, well, okay, you bring up the therapist. Tilda Swinton was fantastic as the therapist, by the way. Did you see her do like the song that he turned her off of? Again, I think that was supposed to be cheesy by design, because again, the idea is that if you go to therapy, typically that's the stuff you talk to your therapist about. You're like, I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know why I'm not happy. I'm trying to remember what happiness feels like. And the idea is that your therapist actually helps you with that. They provide therapy. They provide some sort of rehabilitation. But it's interesting. She said at the end, I was told not to help you. I was just told to diagnose you. So she wasn't really being a therapist. It was an artificial kind of healing. It wasn't really any healing. And then you see that same sort of thing happen with Baisley, where it's like he's kind of indebted to her because she saves his life at the beginning. I mean, would there be anything more banal than dying by choking on an olive at a cocktail party you didn't even want to go to? I've actually been there. I choked on a piece of pizza by myself. I thought I was going to die at one point. So I can relate to that feeling. But the point being is this, like, he comes to find, and again, it's kind of a loss of innocence to talk about a topic that we looked at over the winter. He realizes, oh, she's basically a cam girl. She's just like a kind of, not a prostitute, but she's kind of like a stripper. And he realizes it doesn't really make sense to have feelings for her because he doubts the authenticity of her feelings. And then that's verified when he finds out, oh no, she's getting paid an hourly rate. So the therapist isn't offering any real help. Bainsley doesn't seem to be offering any real love. It doesn't seem to be a true motivation for it. The only pure character in the film seems to be Bob. I mean, he's young. He's 15. He's full of hope. He says, "I'm young enough to believe in anything." He provides this antithesis to Q. But then, in a world like that, what happens to Bob? He's not meant for that kind of world, that kind of mentality, that kind of optimism. It's not suited to survive in that kind of dystopian society. So it's not surprising that he dies. And then you tie it back to somebody like the main character, Q. I don't know if you noticed, like, there are a lot of references to, like, Jesus. There was one moment where they had a picture of Socrates on the screen. I don't know if you caught that. It was in his home, in his domicile that he never left. But there's this whole kind of playing with the notion that maybe Q was like a Christ figure. But going back to Orlando's point, what you come to find in the end is that imagine Jesus Christ who sacrificed himself for no reason at all. It was a meaningless sacrifice. That's kind of, I think, how they're trying to portray Q. Is that he seems to be sacrificing himself for what he thinks is a higher calling or a higher purpose, or for the company. I mean, when he calls himself "we," I kind of think that's a result of his society, where he's so tied into his job. He's so tied into the Mancom. By the way, you should call me Professor Mancom from now on. He's so tied into the corporation that he doesn't know where he ends and the corporation begins. That's what it's just weird. Like, he doesn't remember not being a part of this corporation. And it's only when Bob is reminding him, hey, did you ever have your own life, your own love? And it starts to jog its memory, and then he calls himself I. It's really interesting. What did you think about the ultimate understanding of reality as conveyed in that film? Like, what did you make of the ending? Let me put it that way. What do you think the ending signified?
I think you said Dora to say something, but if you guys want to answer the question first, it's up to y'all.
I mean, I'd rather Isidora speaking first.
Yeah, Isidora, please.
Oh, there's nothing I wanted to say. I'm just so confused still about the whole thing. I didn't even know he.
Yeah, I mean, the way I saw it in the end was like he was like in coma, and he was just like out of the ethereal pain, just kind of like finally having some type of like resignation of what his life was, and like he chooses even to pick the place of like that Barnsley was supposed, like he chose a little bit more like of his model, and he even started playing with the horizon. He was kind of like already laughing to the whole concept of future. It's kind of like he doesn't care anymore about it. I think he was just resignated to whatever is to happen afterwards.
I think the assumption in this movie is that there's nothing real. Like, nothing here is concrete. Like, there's no, I guess, nothing to attach to, I guess you could say. Because all the moments that he had at the end, he kind of woke up from this dream, or he woke up from like this virtual reality. And so even in the end, when he was going into the black hole, like, once again, he kind of wakes up differently. So it's like he's just constantly waking up. So it's like he's kind of living in this matrix, I guess you could say, where he's kind of like, he's waking up every time. So it's like there's nothing real here. With the only thing that you can understand is kind of like to start, oh, I think, therefore I am. It's like that's the only thing that's real is like his mind and his thoughts, and that's kind of what it's real for everybody else is their mind, their thoughts. We're connected virtually through the web, our emotions, our feelings. Like the feelings and the connection, this interweb of like strings everywhere seems to be the only thing that's real.
Yeah, the chaos. Yeah. And again, there's that really intriguing line that says, hey, there's business to be made out of chaos. Like if you can order the chaos in a way that pleases people, you make a lot of money. Yeah, I mean, my take on the ending was Yeah, in a certain sense, he got an answer. The answer was the answer that he was hoping to avoid, which, because again, the entire movie, he's like, how could you believe that there's nothing? How can you believe there's no purpose? And then he comes to find out, yeah, it's exactly right. It's just one giant black hole. And as he gets sucked into it, he wakes up again in the same illusion that was making him happy. And so there's all these questions of, again, what do you base reality on? I mean, he's talking to Matt Damon's character. He's talking to management. And again, I like they don't give it a name. It's just management. And I mean, Matt Damon basically says, it doesn't matter if I'm in your mind or not, or really there. Like, that's not the basis of reality. All that matters is, again, well, for management, all that matters is whether or not you can serve them, whether or not you have a purpose for their agenda, which is, again, to make money off of the chaos by presenting it in a way where it seems more ordered. Now, I think, Orlando, you make an interesting connection. I mean, is that tied into religion? I think that's kind of what they were getting at, but I think it's tied into everything. You know, if you anything, this is Yusha's point, anything you kind of get happiness out of, it could be presented in such a way where it's kind of like a construct. It's sort of contrived. And I think at the end, this is what makes it such a tragedy, is that just when it looks like Q is kind of realizing these key distinctions, coming back, calling himself I, he's being inspired by Bob, he's getting excited by ordering pizza, you know, little things. It turns out that he kind of acquiesces. He's just like, well, you know what? I'm going to go back to the illusion, but I'm going to control my own illusion. I'm going to make the sun set. And so he knows it's an illusion, but to him, that's reality. It doesn't matter that it's not real reality, if that makes sense. All that matters is that if all we have are these kinds of programs, these kinds of illusions in our mind, learn to control that. And that's the only source of happiness. It's really tragic. It's bleak. I mean, you know, I agree with you, Orlando. I think it is a kind of a cynical film, but it's presented in a way where it's not like cynical throughout. You really get the sense that, well, hey, maybe this guy is onto something. Maybe there is something more to it. And he's kind of like Neo from the Matrix, and he's breaking out. But that's not what happens. Instead, he just accepts it.
The Matrix.
Because he realizes there's no alternative.
Manzi, you know what? You kind of just blew my mind, because this kind of is a reference to, I'd say, Friedrich Nietzsche and like God is dead, the whole God is dead idea. When you were talking about the sun dying for no reason, and that kind of was meaningless, and like that whole idea of like the faith doesn't really matter, and that in and of itself is kind of like what this kind of seems to all be. From the beginning, it was interesting how they mathematically tied the idea of nothingness. And it's like, oh, okay, well, the Big Bang is gonna contract, it's gonna come back eventually and equal zero. So it's like that kind of gives a mathematical equation to the concept of nothing, which is weird. And even though I've known of this theory, I've never really thought about it like that. So I was like, no, that's kind of cool. But yeah, it was pretty insane how they did that.
Yeah, everything adds up to nothing.
See, now I'm even more certain that the kid Bob was his own past self that he was imagining. Why? Because if you look at it in the beginning of the movie or whatever, he kept saying that I'm dying, that we are dying. And then comes in this Bob character who's severely sick, and you get glimpses of it throughout the movie because he keeps wiping his nose, or supposedly wiping his face with it. Then when just when he comes to the realization that Bob is extremely sick and he's not gonna make it, so the two guys come in, collect Bob, and take him back to the hospital, right? And soon after that, Q himself dies or goes into coma or whatever, finds his happy place. So it was his, I think it was his own perception that made him realize, I don't have much long to live, so I've neglected my love because his marriage was broken and he was divorced once before. To the girl that he was interested in, broke his reality of true love because she was getting paid by the hour. 3, he did not trust anyone. I mean, he did trust everyone, but not Bob. Why? Because we critique ourselves the most out of anyone. So I think that's another reason why Bob kept asking him to trust him, but Q never trusted Bob because of the fact that he would critique himself that harshly.
That's interesting. It's an interesting take. Yeah. So something else too, kind of interesting, is again, they're clearly trying to simulate some sort of porn site, but the sort of the porn, quote unquote, was just being on a beach, like feeling the sand, feeling like watching the sun set but never fully set, swimming in the water, eating fruit, like just stuff that's like normal everyday life stuff, or at least before. So it's interesting that that's where people are trying to escape. That's the form of escapism. It's, what we take for granted life to be. Again, until recently, perhaps. But yeah, this whole idea of trust. I mean, his trust is kind of betrayed at every turn. He finds out that they're spying on him, and he gets all the cameras and he smashes them, and then that's the end of him. He realizes that his therapist was never really trying to help him. And again, Bob seems like the only one who kind of did care about him. His management didn't care about him. The other thing to consider is this: he was living with a lot of regrets, because remember, he got the call earlier and kind of he didn't really receive it. He messed it up, so he kept waiting for another phone call. He kept waiting for the second coming of the phone call, and so it's kind of like he didn't want to blow the opportunity again. And then you just come to find that, well, there really never was one. It wasn't a real opportunity to begin with, but they were making money off him, just like Bob revealed. Bob's like, we picked you not because you're Neo, not because you're the chosen one, but because, yeah, you work harder than other people for this corporation. So that's why they're tasking you with these big jobs. And so I wonder, getting back to something you just said earlier, when he did seem to be experiencing joy and crushing entities, so to speak, which is a really interesting way to put it, something else I kind of want to talk about. When you're crushing entities and he's being happy, it's kind of like with the understanding that he thinks there's going to be something better on the horizon. And so that's kind of like, well, okay, I'll, if I get really good at this, I'll get that call again. I mean, yeah. It's he's being taken advantage of. He's being manipulated, like at every turn. So,
Yeah,
I mean, it's tough.
I agree with that, because now that I think about it, the beach scenes, I think there were two or three of them. They kept reminding me of the last part of The Matrix, where he goes above the tech city and finds a true sunset. Where Neo and his girlfriend go in that tech city or whatever that place is. And he sees a true sunset, and he comes to the realization that, oh, we all have been living in a simulation, and I need to turn down this technology. I think same thing can be seen in this movie, where he understands the fact that, oh, we have all been living in reality, and now I have to turn down this simulation. And I think that's when he transitions from we to an I.
Yeah, I mean, he leaves his house for the first time, he says, in what, a year? Like, he's
Yeah.
never even been inside. It's a tomb.
I think, though, like, also it was interesting. I mean, they didn't really compare and contrast too many of the other outside characters. Just the characters alone, messing with the butterflies and all the other colorful characters. You didn't see too much of them. Now, I feel like that's kind of deliberate, but I kind of think to myself, well, like, are they as cynical as he is? Are they as miserable as he is? Is it possible that he can exist on the same plane as people who are actually happy? And then if they are happy, then perhaps maybe they're in the same kind of rat race, I guess you could say, but maybe they've kind of found their solemn and their friends, and maybe their own sort of emotional attachments. And I think that's also like another big part of this is like living on your own, living without material things doesn't necessarily guarantee you happiness. Like a certain way of living does not guarantee you anything. That's just period. I mean, there's like a psychological paper I remember reading last semester. I think you would have read it too, Fernando, where basically they were trying to measure happiness in people, and like they found that it wasn't necessarily religion, it wasn't necessarily sports, it wasn't necessarily anything at all that was like specific to happiness. Rather, it was like a basic need of it was just like emotional relationships. So I think that's something that this movie kind of misses, and I kind of would have liked they explored that a little more.
I I disagree with that, Orlando, because I think all it has a lot to do with that point has a lot to do with acceptance. The only reason why this guy Q was so miserable because he did not accept that reality. It was like, no, there has to be something more. And all the people who were happy, quote unquote, they had accepted the fact that okay, this is our life. So what we missed or rejected or denied or accepted the calling, we know our purpose, we don't know our purpose, it doesn't matter. We just accept it blindly. But then this guy Q comes in who questions everything. He's like, why am I the one solving the zero theorem? Why is the zero theorem? Why is the company? What is the company? Who is the management? He comes in with all these questions and theories that eventually gets him 6 feet under.
I guess that makes sense because he kind of lets go. Like he says himself, oh, I did have a girlfriend, and he kind of puts himself in this place where he gave himself this lonely life. And also the younger character too, he was like, I've never met anyone my age. I've never got to experience those things. I'm already bored of everything. Imagine when I get to your age. So it's like that in and of itself is kind of like an illustration of that too, which is interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's a process that we all
Yeah,
go through in
and
life.
you know, Bob brings up.
No, it's okay. My internet is choppy,
What'd you
so
say?
from time to time, my internet is being rough. So, but yeah, I feel like there is a process that somebody, like everyone goes into their life. Whenever we start growing and we start feeling some pain and we start seeing that some other people feel pain, and then we are able to have the maturity enough to kind of like, like picture ourselves like older. It's kind of like we start like, wow, like whatever thing that you're most feeling right now must be like hard. I mean, me from time to time, like whenever I see somebody who is already like in the 90s or something, that they're not really like doing something with their life or anything, it's just kind of like on the waiting. For me, that's like, wow, like a child. I from time to time I think it's like I hope I'm able to create something that gives me meaning day a day, because if it is then just waiting, that must be like so harsh. And then having like who most people are living their life, you're just kind of like most people that you knew are already dead. So it's kind of like for me those things are kind of like puzzle mind, and it must be really difficult, and you have to really work to have some type of strong foundation so you can get there without like you know
So then I guess it kind of makes
not
you ask. Oh,
having
sorry.
any aspiration. But yeah.
Sorry, you like paused, so I thought you were done. I'm sorry, bro. Yeah, it like pauses for a second. But kind of what you said makes me think of something. It's like, well, then is meaning kind of just a balancing act where maybe we shouldn't get caught up in constantly trying to find meaning in everything, but at the same time, the things that we do enjoy, we should find our own personal meaning into it to say, well, this is why I do it and I enjoy it. But there doesn't have to be something that's completely overlying for it to make me feel like I'm paralyzed, to make me feel like I'm caged in this box of meaning that I have to create. Like I have to create this. Like maybe that doesn't have to be the purpose. Maybe that's the purpose of this whole movie.
Yeah, I mean, I like all those points. I mean, look, Matt Damon basically, or management basically quotes Nietzsche, and towards the end, where he's like, again, life is inherently meaningless. It's nothing means anything. That's a very Nietzschean point. But Nietzsche's whole idea behind that is, well, now you have to take that and kind of create meaning and create yourself in a way that takes strength and it takes endurance. You don't just settle. You don't just concede. Um, Bob brings up the notion of paradox like halfway through the film, or maybe a little bit earlier. And I think the main character there, Q, is himself a paradox, because as kind of defeated or as like cynical as he comes across, he's actually the most optimistic, because he does still hold out hope. He does still believe in something. And again, this is why management tabbed him in the first place on some level. Remember, Matt Damon or management says you're the antithesis of the zero theorem, because the zero theorem proves it's pointless to have hope. Like in reality, the reality is there is nothing to reality that can make you happy. So what management does is that they create order artificially in order to provide you with an artificial happiness that you wouldn't have otherwise. That's the sunset. That's the beach. That's what the all of the escapist stuff is. And yet he's on some level he's not satisfied with that because he wants to disprove the zero theorem, which ultimately he fails at doing. But he also in the end, again, he does the anti-Nietzschean thing. He just kind of like, well, I'm going to be happy in the way that I can. I think the ultimate paradox is that while he's actually alive, he's like dead. Like he's living in a tomb that is his home. It's even referred to as such by Bob. And then when he does fall into the black hole, presumably die, he's in, I guess, this artificial, what is it called, the neural net? He kind of like awakens the neural net, and he just plays with the illusions, and he's happy. He's playing with the beach ball. He's not, drowning in the sea like he did at first. It's it's really fascinating.
Yeah, and there is also, two things. One, I remember the quote that Bob was saying that, the protagonist was saying like, hey, like, how can you basically not believe in anything but believe in the soul? And it's like, well, because I'm young enough to still believe in certain things. So I like that, that analogy. But also, uh, part of what I believe the movie was trying to convey is that, let's say that if you accept that life is meaningless, you're free to live it whatever you want. So he's kind of like, okay, life is meaningless. So what is the point of like worrying whether like I'm gonna be waiting for a car or not? So I'm just gonna go to the beach, play with the sunset, and do whatever makes me happy. Because at the end of the day, it's all I can do until I die. So it's kind of like accepting, it's kind of like accept is the first step.
Yeah. And again,
So
that's also a reference to Nietzsche too. Nietzsche, the very last aphorism from maybe his greatest work, he describes life as being a young child at a beach who just makes sandcastles, and then when the waves destroy the sandcastle, he's not sad, he just builds another one. Nietzsche's like, that's what life is. And so you kind of see him on the beach, and he's just like he's playing like a boy at the end. Q.
yeah.
Kind of recapturing that innocence. But again, I don't think it's an accident. He's kind of like a relic in this new dystopian world. That's why in his home you see Jesus, you see Socrates, because again, what makes him a relic, what makes him sort of untimely, which is how Nietzsche referred to himself as the untimely one. What makes him untimely is that he's somehow still optimistic. He still believes that there's going to be not a reward or a payoff per se, but there's going to be some sort of deeper significance to his life. He's going to find the meaning. He's going to figure out what it's all about. And then what he finds out is what it's about is nothing. And so make the illusion your own. Control the illusion. Control the programming. Yeah. What did you guys think of the not the pivot entirely, but what did y'all think of just the way it was shot? Like the visuals, they were stunning. Am I right?
I mean, it was particular.
I think to
That's
some degree
definitely
they were
exciting.
sorry, yeah.
No, it's okay. I think we were about to say something like around the same, like extravagant. So you can have some sense of reality, but to also understand that this is not real. This is just a metaphor. For me, it was like the two guys like going for the equipment. Like one is really tall and lean, and the other one is like super short and like a fatty. It's like kind of like the good and the bad boy. So. And they also kind of like play on their fears. I also think like part of the visual kind of like make you see a little bit of the especially like constricted and kind of like really just like I'm rigid, but you can tell that whatever he's feeling is changing also the surrounding. So I think it's meant to also be able to express more abstractly how the emotions are going in that moment.
What the heck? Manzi just cut out. Okay, there you go, Manzi.
I was looking at the chat.
You jumped
Trying
into
to develop
the
Mancam.
you jumped into the black hole for a second. That's what happened.
That's where I live.
Ah.
That's when you major in philosophy and you get your degree. That's what happens. You get thrown into the black hole.
Oh man.
I was looking at the chat. Isadora was saying something. Well, I mean, Isadora, to your question, we don't really. I don't know if he died or not because I think it's intentionally ambiguous because it's tough to figure out exactly what living is. Like, what is the reality of actually existing in this world? If there doesn't seem to be any real substantive difference between physical existing and kind of just existing in your mind, and even again, even Q himself doesn't really know when he's talking to somebody if they're actually there or not. It's and so I think that's supposed to make the reader. I think that's supposed to make the viewer feel uneasy. Like going back to what Fernando said, I think a lot of the shots and the scenes and like the way it's sort of just cinematography wise, the whole thing, it's supposed to make you feel like claustrophobic at times, and it's supposed to make you feel anxiety ridden at times. It's not supposed to make you feel just like comfortable the whole movie. And yeah, when you see him kind of destroy the mainframe there for a moment, you think, yes, this is it. Like he's done it. He's our hero. And then you realize, no, he's just getting sucked into the vortex, whatever that is. So, I mean, even if it's a physical death or not, it seems to kind of be beside the point. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of that, yeah, I think it's beside the point. That's true.
Well, let me ask you this too. I mean, given what we saw in this world, like, is something like love even possible? Is something like friendship even possible? I mean, Orlando was talking about the emotional connections and stuff like that. And I think the only real, I mean, the two emotional relationships are between him and Bainsley, Q and Bainsley, and then Q and Bob. Although then again, you see Jody at the end. He's upset because he got fired. And he's a wreck. And he looks right at Q and says, I know who you are. Do you know who you are? Again, it hints back to this idea of the we, of course, but also it's like he doesn't really grasp what everybody else seems to kind of know intuitively, even Bob, which is that reality is exactly what it seems like it is. And to imagine that it's something different or something deeper or something more profound is nothing but profoundly foolish. And that's why, you know, when he doesn't elope with Bainsley, even though he proposed it to her initially, you're kind of like, well, did he learn a lesson? Or has he become so jaded to the point where he's not like emotionally capable of doing that in the real world? Like I mean, look, he proposed to Bainsley, he said, let's live together apart. Let's stay in this illusion forever. Let's stay in this program forever. And then she's not like popping champagne. She was pretty hard. When she comes and says, I got everything I own in this van. I have nobody who loves me or cares for me. He doesn't want the reality. He wants the illusion. That's not easy.
Am I the only one?
Cut out completely. Yeah.
So he got froze. Okay. Yes,
Like,
right now.
it was funny because he like was super clear and then he like slowly got unclear. And
I
it was
mean,
like happened and then you're doing it too. And then I'm like, am I still
there
here?
you
I
go.
exist.
What is that?
I
Can you
just
hear me
took
now?
a couple of pictures of you.
Yeah, we can hear you, but
Just
then you
like-
cut out.
What's the last thing you heard me say? I'll repeat myself.
You said,
welcome to Philosophy Club.
Oh, you said something about is he too jaded to feel a real emotion.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the situation: is that initially he proposed to Bainsley, let's elope. It was his idea for them to be together, but he wanted to stay together in the illusion. Like he's like, let's just stay here in this false paradise. Let's just like be together in this way. And then when she comes to him in reality, she doesn't have her makeup on. They're not on the beach. She's not like popping champagne and saying, let's get this party started. When it's just her and she's like, everything I own is in this van. Nobody in this world loves me. Let's you and I do this. I know that you seem to have real feelings for me. And he doesn't want that. He wanted to be with her in the illusion. He didn't want the real Bainsley. He wanted the fabrication, which again is very sad and tragic, because just when you thought that Bainsley was playing him, you get the feeling that she was played, because now she doubts whether or not he really liked her or if he just liked the illusion that she created. It's really sad. And then he has this one really interesting line that kind of just goes quickly. He says, I'm always alone, but never lonely.
Mhm.
Which he seems to be suggesting that he's happy, quote unquote. He's okay with being alone. It's not something tragic for him. And then you see that come to fruition in the end. He's back on the Paradise Island, just like, he wanted to be with Bainsley, but instead he's by himself and he's happy.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Great
I
point.
mean, I was responding to your point, Orlando, about, whether or not there were emotional relationships in the movie. I think a big takeaway from this film is that that kind of dystopian society where all of your stimuli, all of your focus is based, it's filtered through a screen, it's filtered through a computer, through phones, through tablets, through laptops. It becomes very difficult to grasp the source of your emotions, and then you become emotionally uneducated when it comes to who you are. And I think that's part of the takeaways that so again, somebody like Bob, whose father is management. I mean, that's an allegory in and of itself. It's almost like Bob is exactly the kind of customer that management wants to take advantage of. Somebody who's optimistic enough. Can you hear me? Somebody who's optimistic enough to believe in the order that's being provided.
No, I mean, you're right, and the whole idea here, I mean, makes me wonder. Like that's why I feel like it would have been cool to have a narrative with other people, because it makes me wonder if it isn't. It seems to be just a focus on a person who's conflicted, Because I feel like even within that kind of virtual reality, there still could be something real. Like the only sense of reality, of real, that you get is their feelings. And I think for that girl, the reason that she fell for this dude who was like seemingly so belittled is because he kind of gave her this glimpse of reality, of real love. And so that's why she's like, I don't know why I'm attached to him. It's just him. And it's because maybe he's the only person out of everybody else that gave her some kind of glimpse. And everybody else maybe was just trying to use her, so on and so forth.
I think that's
It
right.
just came to me that we're looking at the entire movie through the perspective of a person who is quote unquote normal, right? But if we start looking at it through someone's eyes who is introverted, or someone who has a very low EQ, the emotional quotient, so it all makes sense, because me being both of them, having low emotional quotient and being extremely introverted, it really makes sense that he does not know anyone else outside of those 4 or 5 people that are displayed in the movie. Of course, he doesn't have a family, that's why they're not in the picture. But one is his manager from his work. The second is his quote unquote lover, Bainsley. And the third is this kid that shows him the real meaning of life, or what is it like to have fun, or something like that. So then it makes a little more sense about why he always prefers to be alone instead of calling him someone who is like not mentally stable or not mentally fit.
Yeah, and that's why he's seeing a therapist, or at least he was assigned a therapist. Oh, yeah, thanks for coming, Orlando. Thanks for
Thanks
discussing.
for coming. Uh,
Uh,
um, but yeah, of the psychologist or whatever that she's meant not just to treat instead of cure. It also kind of speak about like the medicine like here like it's more meant to kind of like they don't want you completely healed because then they cannot monetize. So they just kind of like you have all these problems, so you get all crazy like oh I need solutions, but they never actually give them to you.
yeah, no, that's a great point because again, his therapist was hired by management, and it's like she's like, I'm just supposed to diagnose you, with the idea being that once we know what your diagnosis is, we kind of know how to cater to you. We know what you'll buy. We can better target your consumership, that kind of thing. I mean, it's very similar kind of to nowadays when people are collecting data to make you a more precise consumer.
Yeah.
Only it's even worse because you're supposed to trust your therapist, although it's very clear early on that she's kind of a joke. I'll say this too: that this movie has one of my favorite jokes in it that I didn't expect to hear, and it was when I heard it, I like spit my tea out. It was funny. It was really early on, where it's the first time he meets Bainsley, and he refers to himself as we. You know how he does, but as at the audience, you don't really know it yet that that's what he's doing. So he says we, and then she looks at him. She goes, "What do you have a mouse in your pocket?" And then you come to find he lives with a rat that keeps kind of coming out and taking the pizza and getting it back in. I think the rat's supposed to symbolize everything. I think ultimately that's what life is for the humans. Like, you remember how excited Bob got when the pizza came? That's how excited the rat gets when the pizza. It's like throw them a scrap, of like $5 dough and cheese, and they'll live off of that, and they'll be happy. It's upsetting. So yeah.
I mean, that is the connotation of our entire society because if you look at it right now, psychologists and psychiatrists and any other form of therapists make more money through advertising companies than they do through their clientele. Why? Because advertising companies hire these people to pick up patterns, to pick up the people's psyche behind on what ads they click on what websites they click on how they navigate through the web, to make a personalized experience for you, for me, for Fernando, and for anyone else that has access to the internet. And if you look at the management, they had bought the psychiatrist or whoever the therapist was, and they had programmed her to not tell him the truth and not even diagnose the problems that he had. So I think it's a very good depiction of how the current society is. As long as you're stuck behind monitors, everyone appreciates you. But as soon as you step back from the monitor, you're suddenly no longer wanted.
Yeah, because you're no longer valuable. You're no longer commodifiable, I suppose. Yeah, it reminds me, because again, you like to trust your doctors, right? And you go to your doctors in good faith, and you think that they're there just to help you. And then you learn that they're actually sponsored by pharmaceutical firms and they get kickbacks from them. So their job is just to diagnose you so they can so that they can make a customer out of you, because they themselves have already been bought and sold. And you feel like your trust has been exploited. I think that's what it's trying to convey. Only it's much more cynical in the film. The film is kind of like, you almost get the impression that anybody who is even trying to help you is only doing it because they're getting something out of it, or they're being like, they're getting paid an hourly wage, like again, like Bainsley, or they're hired by a corporation that's telling them what to do in the guise of like being your doctor or being your friend or being your lover. Yeah. Something else I wanted to bring up that was a little, we're going till 7:30, folks, so strap in.
True.
Something, well, maybe not that, but something else I wanted to bring up. Do you remember when he was accused of being like a kind of like a pederast? It happened kind of quick. It's when his supervisor came to see him. The supervisor, what's his name, Joby? I can't remember, Joby or Jody. When he comes and he's like, crying, basically. There's emotion. He's crying like at his doorstep, and he's like, I've been fired. And he's like, I can't believe you would do that sort of thing to the kid, you sick, F. And Q is like, you don't know what you're talking about. that's really interesting. On the one hand, it's parallel to Socrates, who was accused of that kind of thing. And we saw the image of Socrates earlier in the film. It's in his house, it's in his cave. But also it's the idea that like you could have like a real friendship. It almost seems like that can't be what's going on here, even though that is what was going on. And so you must have had some other like ulterior base pleasure motive for like putting him in your bath when he was unconscious. You can see how that looks. If you're a grown man and you have a 15-year-old who's like basically unconscious and naked in your bathtub. So again, that's the idea. Like the point being is that this kind of society, it seems to engender just a certain perception of reality and a certain perception of happiness that is really not open to some of the more elevated, dare we say, like spiritual or more like intangible components of what makes reality, you know, pleasant. It's all kind of base stuff. It's just like instant gratification, bright, shiny lights. It's almost like you're in a casino in Vegas when he's walking around. It's just constant stimulus. When he's walking down the street, there's the ticker tape that follows him. It just shows you that everything is monetized, everything's commodified. And even humans themselves are like, yeah, they're part of it all. They're sort of wrapped up in it. And then the justification of it all for management is that, well, there's nothing else. Would you rather just be miserable or would you rather be artificially happy? In that case, let us create this illusion for you. But if you step out of line or if you challenge the illusion, you'll either be exploited and taken advantage of, or you'll be, basically kicked out of society. Like Simba.
But we do have two more instances of emotion where Q shows emotion towards the kid. I mean, he was sad and grief stricken when the kid got sick all of a sudden. Q goes into this panic mode because he doesn't know what to do. His first instinct was to get the first aid kit, even though he does not know what is happening to Bob. And the second instance is again regret and sorrow when the girl leaves, and right after she says that everything of mine is in that van, and he tells her to leave, and a couple moments later you just see him in regret and grief when Bob says to him that was your moment, you could have had that. And so it's that was my point of bringing up someone who doesn't process emotions as equally as any other person does. So maybe yes, he regrets it, maybe he still doubts the relationship, but all in all, it was another moment of emotion, and I think it was all building towards him being more autonomous and finding himself that, oh, I'm not this workhorse. I am Q. I am who I am. This is what it is. So having to say that he was completely stone-hearted, I think is pretty cruel. Yeah. So I think he did, because he does get endorsement from Bob, who says that this is your chance when the lady comes over to his house without any makeup or without any virtual reality or anything like that. So Bob does indicate to him that, hey man, this is your chance. If you want to be happy, you should go with her. So you won't be stuck in this endless cycle of just crunching numbers and solving algorithms and just continuing what you're doing right now. But by the time he realizes the fact that the lady was actually his happiness, it's already too late, because at the very last scene where he is in the simulation on the beach, he picks up her clothing, smiles at it, and then goes back to playing in the sea with the ball at first, and then the sunset. And I think it's another symbol towards the lady that, okay, she wanted the sun to always be setting but never set, and that's why even in his own virtual reality, the sun was always setting but never set.
Yeah, no, you're making me rethink some of the things here. I mean, maybe that's what the deal is that he's worried about this call coming from, you know, some nameless, faceless thing to give him the meaning of life. But really, he missed the call that was Bainsley. Like that was him missing. Was Bainsley like saying, "Fine, I guess you're not going to come with me," and that would have given his life meaning, because it would have been, again, real emotional connection, which his life has been lacking up to that point. And yeah, I mean, I maybe the fact that this young innocent 15-year-old. What'd you say?
It's okay. I said that too.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, my internet is like, it's my internet. Don't worry.
You might have been, yeah, you might have been frozen at that point. But yeah, I mean, you know, I guess the parallel to the Christ figure is maybe better suited for Bob, because Bob's the one that tells him, "Hey, that was your chance. That was the call that you should have gotten." He doesn't say it like that, but he might as well have. And maybe in the end, when Bainsley, or rather when Q picks up Bainsley's clothes, it's almost like he recognizes that he missed it, but then he also realizes, well, I could still have the illusion of it. Like I still have a piece of her. Like some of her's still here in this illusion she created. And maybe that brings them some joy.
Wait. In the beginning, when Bob is first introduced, not first, well, when Bob first comes to Q's house, he says, "I promise I'll get you a call," right? And
oh yeah, you're right. Yeah.
and then this lady comes in who says that I don't have anything else. Everything of mine is in the van. So Bob did live up to his promise. He did get him a call, and it was again at Q's mistake that he did not answer that call. What Q was waiting for was an actual physical telephonic call where someone would tell him that, "Hey, Q, this is your purpose. This is how long you're going to do it. And this is how much you're going to do it." So, but that's not always the case. That our indications are not 100% defined, and it's up to us to make proper sense of them. So, in my opinion, at least, Bob did live up to the promise that he made to Q, that I'll get you a call, just do your work for now. And then he does get a call from this woman at his chance of being happy forever.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great takeaway too. I mean, both of y'all for making that connection. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, no, Fernando, you didn't cut out a ton. Like, I think a lot of what you said made it, but like sometimes you'll pause and then it'll come out really quickly. But yeah, I think you might be right. And I guess that's part of the deeper tragedy of the film, is that if society is kind of breeding these kinds of people by design, it seems, then it makes it almost impossible to be able to recognize the call when it does come. Even when you have like this like angelic young innocent kid trying to help you, bring you outside, stuff like that, showing you the light, taking you out of the cave. I mean, that's kind of like a platonic, I think it was an over the top platonic sort of analogy there, if you know the allegory of the cave. But yeah, yeah, I didn't catch that earlier. That's an insightful point, y'all. Well, okay, I mean, I think we're coming up on an hour here. Yeah, does anybody have any kind of final thoughts? Or, I mean, just generally, did you like the movie? Did you not like the movie? Would you recommend it?
I wouldn't.
Laughing.
It was too confusing.
It was
I feel like it would just make someone get a headache. It gave me anxiety seeing the mess.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah. I think it was trying to provoke anxiety. Look, I'm not gonna lie.
Believe it or not, it was the point of the movie to invoke anxiety, to invoke this feeling of discomfort and all that. So that was the point of the movie, because it just gave us a reality check that, hey, we hide behind these devices thinking that this is our purpose, when in actuality our purpose is behind or away from the screen.
Well, they did a good job at it.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
It's but that's a good point. So when like it's in the flesh right in front of you, you can't even recognize it because you're used to seeing it through VR, wearing like a body suit. I mean, I think that was an important detail too. We didn't really touch upon is that in order to connect to the rest of the world, to reality, he needed another body. Like it wasn't just like looking at a screen. He had to literally cover himself in data, cover himself in like wires and everything, to become more connected. It's very dystopic. I don't know if y'all are familiar with Terry Gilliam. He's the one who directed the film. Uh, he was a founding member of Monty Python, overrated in my opinion, but he's made some of the greatest films I think ever. This is of a piece with a film that came out in the 80s that I'm a huge fan of called Brazil, and it's very similar. It's about a dystopic future where all of like real authentic connections are kind of severed, and it's very disorienting. It's very again anxiety inducing, for by design for entertainment purposes. This film that we watched, it's a very artistic film. It's like high art. It's not easily digestible. So yeah, if you felt anxiety, I mean, don't worry about it. I think that's what he was going for. I felt it too.
Yeah, it was just horrible.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look up reviews of the film too, you'll see most people they go one extreme or the other. They're like this movie's a masterpiece, which is kind of where I'm coming from, or they're like more like Isadora, where they're like this shouldn't have been made.
No. I questioned it while I was watching it.
Have you ever seen anything like that, Isadora?
I have.
Seen
It was my first time ever watching something like that, so I was so confused, and I was having like an anxiety attack over here.
Well, we'll keep that in mind when we select our next film. Maybe we'll top it.
Oh no.
Well, Ferdinando, what about you?
If you want a suggestion for another similar movie, I would suggest The Platform. It's on Netflix. It came out in 2019. So it definitely has better graphics. It is gory and more gruesome because there's a lot of blood in there, but it's a phenomenal masterpiece. I highly recommend watching it.
Isidora, listen, I also love the movie, but he's teasing you at the same time. If you feel uncomfortable with this one, you're gonna definitely feel uncomfortable with that one. But it's an amazing movie. It's an amazing movie.
No, then we should watch it.
We have last semester we did. I mean,
Yeah.
it's an amazing movie.
Oh, I guess I should go watch it.
Well, I mean, that depends. I mean, it might not suit your taste. But yeah. Again, and we are kind of limited to Canopy for our film selections. But like I said, I think they have a lot of good ones up there. But all right. I mean, does any other final thoughts or anything? Fernando, did you like the movie? I don't think we got an answer out of you.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's full of meaning. I just don't know if I would like recommend. It's not for everyone. So I like, it's like you watch it and then it's like, oh, you. You made me look at something very weird. Like, no, not weird. Like, did you thought about the meaning behind it? But I like the movie.
Well, hey, that's what we're here to do. But I mean, look, that's what philosophy does. It's supposed to shake you up, make you uncomfortable, get you thinking in a different way, expand the horizon of what's out there, film-wise, reading-wise, topics-wise.
Get more connected.
Exactly.
And have a better illusion.
Well, all right, y'all. I mean, if there's nothing else, I guess we could wrap it up. Thanks for coming to the discussion. Thank you for checking out the film. Appreciate you being here. Thanks for your time. We're gonna do another one next month. Pretty much, yeah, 4 weeks from now. Yeah, we don't know what it's gonna be yet. We're gonna wait and see like how some of the discussions go moving forward, and then use that as an inspiration to come up with a film. If you have any film suggestions, we're totally open to suggestion, but they got to come from the website Canopy, Kanopy. It's something we have access to for free if you're a college student or college professor. So yeah, there it is, Canopy. So yeah, if you're interested in watching something that you see on Canopy, let us know, and we could certainly consider it. Probably watch it.
Okay. I love the background in Isidora's room. Anime. Ta, ta, Costa. I just noticed it. I mean, oh. All right.
All right, Joe.
Thank you so much. So should I stop the recording? My internet is being choppy. I don't know if somebody responded, but okay, I'm gonna take the hint and I'm just
Yeah, you
gonna
can
stop
cut
the recording then.
You can cut it.
Uh,